What's going on, movie fans? I'm Jake,
And I'm Max.
and today we're going to be talking about The Iron Claw, coming up next.
Action!
So, The Iron Claw is A24's most recent movie following the Von Erichs family, the famous wrestling family, as they go through a lot of emotional trauma, as they go through the Von Erichs curse, is what they call it. And yeah, I'm not really going to go into much more detail there until later. Max, what did you know about this story coming in?
Yeah, I mean, when I heard about it, I knew it was like something about sports, about wrestling, about tragedy, but I didn't really I didn't know much. I didn't really research the movie. It wasn't actually what I was planning on going to see that day. But I did not expect it to hit as hard as it did. So, yeah, I was pretty open. I mean, yeah, how about you?
Yeah, I don't really watch. I'm a big sports fan, but I don't really watch wrestling. I knew nothing going in. All I knew was that one picture they showed of Zac Efron that didn't exactly look
Yeah.
like Zac
Yeah,
Efron.
yeah.
So I'm like, oh, this movie might be funny. It might be, and it was entertaining. I'm like, it might just be like an entertaining, funny movie. I didn't expect to get hit as hard
Yeah.
as I did. So, going on that, which character do you think was the best in the movie, or like which actor did the best job?
I mean, I have to say Zac Efron, just like his performance throughout and like the way it narrates from his perspective and like the grief and the trauma and his resilience, I think it really shines through. And it's a really different take on him, compared to Neighbors, where he's just like this frat bro. And now, it's just interesting. It's interesting seeing characters who don't usually play serious roles, play such serious roles, and play them so well. So I feel like I'd have to go with Zac Efron.
Yeah, I'm a similar boat to that. Zac Efron to me is known for High School Musical and The Greatest Showman. Two movies that are absolutely nothing like what we watched on The Iron Claw. But yeah, what is your take on this Von Erichs curse and then what goes on with this family?
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, I didn't really think much was going to happen. It kind of had that slow start, and then it was like bam, bam, bam. But once I kind of started hearing sniffling and the tears coming out from other people around me in the theater, I was like, okay, this might be a serious movie. But yeah, I mean, it's like, it really, I think what shines through is this toxic masculinity from their father and like how he wants his kid to live his goals and his dreams through them. And, it's like they're never getting satisfaction out of their own lives. And there's so many scenes where that shines through, and they don't even know how to properly process their grief and what's going on in their lives because they just like are listening to this, voice above, controlling their every move.
Yeah, when I saw the movie in theaters, I walked out of that and I turned to my friends and said, the thing I took away from it is the Von Erichs curse isn't real and the dad is the curse. Because he pushed them to do all these things, specifically talking about Mike. Because like all the other brothers, David and Kevin were wrestlers. They loved wrestling. Kerry was an Olympian. Mike was a musician. He didn't care about wrestling. They go to a party, he performs. That's what he wants to do.
Such a good scene.
After the first death occurs of David, he gets put into the wrestling business. And that's what absolutely screws up his life.
I mean, yeah, you see the scene where they're on the porch, and it's right after David dies, and they're talking, and instantly the dad is just like, all right, so this is our new strategy, this is our plan for the shows, and what we're going to do, and the moves we're going to make, and it was just like, what? Like, your son just died. And it wasn't even like the first son who had died. It was just like there was no emotion. And it was just like so shocking to see that. And it's like, it really shows how like, back in the day, there was no like emotional like attachment to like, families and the way that people treated their father. Like, it was such a professional relationship, it feels like. And it makes me, I don't know, when I was watching, it really just made me appreciate like the way my family operates and the way like I feel like nowadays people are with their loved ones and how much more like emotionally available and vulnerable, especially men are. And I feel like it just really like, it showed how like closed off they were from like experiencing how they felt, like all the actors.
Yeah, it definitely, when I walked out of that movie, it made me appreciate my family and my younger sisters. I saw this with a friend who has brothers, and I saw it with him and his brothers, and they walked out of the theater and they all hugged each other. It was just like a very heart-wrenching, emotional movie, makes you appreciate your family. What would you say was the scene that hit you the hardest?
I mean, I feel like I'd have to give it to the scene. It was right before the end when Carrie had just died. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
right?
it was Carrie.
And, in the note you had said, he says, remind me, he said, I'm off to see my brothers, right?
Something like that.
Something of
along
that
those
sort.
lines, yeah.
And, it takes them, it just kind of fades into this scene where they're at the lake. And there's a boat going by. And there's the few of the brothers, I think it's David and
Mike.
And Mike are on the boat. And they meet up with Carrie on the land. And out comes Jack Jr., the brother from way before that they talked about, that they never really explained the death. And they all kind of just smile. There's no dialogue, and they just kind of hug. And the whole scene, I just thought about, Kevin. And I was like, he can't even be there to experience this, like, love for his brothers. And the whole reason he was the only one who I feel like really cared about wrestling, but also just, like, about family and, like, having brothers. And in the beginning when he talked to the mom and was asking her to see if Fritz could lay off Mike, because he was so harsh on him and not supporting his dreams. And it was just like, it all kind of came together. And it was just like, it's just so sad. Like, all these, like, this whole family is gone. And they're like, this is like, ideally a dream that, he may have, but he'll never be able to be there with them.
Yeah, I think the part of that scene that made it the most emotional is that, like, around the time when Jack Jr. comes out, a little before that, when they're all, like, together on the boardwalk, the three of them looked the happiest that they ever looked throughout the entire movie, which shows the pain that they were going through, not even, like, before the deaths, like, not even just when the deaths were happening, but from what their dad was putting onto them.
Yeah, I was going to say the stress of the father.
Yeah, he was pushing them very hard. Like I said, I think the father, Fritz, was the curse of the family. I thought that was just such a nice scene, a beautiful scene. For me, the scene that hit me the hardest was the end of the movie. Kevin is now, he has a family, he's got a wife, he's got 2 younger kids, and they're outside and they're throwing a football. And Kevin said to them something about, like, oh, like, appreciate your brothers to each other, like, you guys are family, appreciate each other.
He was the last brother standing, like the last kid.
Yeah, and one of the kids is like, oh, did you ever have brothers? And he's like, yeah, I did. They're gone now. And then the 2 kids come, hug their father, huddle around him and say...
As he's crying.
Yes, as he's crying. And they're like, we'll be your brothers now. Yeah. And the movie cuts after that.
Yeah, fades to black, yeah.
And the silence that was in the theater after that moment, because everyone was just so emotionally taken back.
It was like this just moment of, like, these kids don't even understand, and they don't even know. He says, oh, I had some brothers. I mean, like, not 5. Like, they don't even realize, like, as a viewer, you're like, they don't even get it. Like, 5 brothers.
Now you mentioned he had 5 brothers. We only see 3 of them in the movie and hear about the 4th one, Jack Jr. There was another brother that was completely cut from this movie, which is crazy to think of, because if this movie wasn't based on a true story, you would say, like, oh, it's so unrealistic, no way this stuff happens. The fact that pretty much everything that happens is true, and there's more that you don't know about is crazy. And I'm not going to say I, am upset they didn't put the extra brother in there, because I feel like it actually might have been too much.
I know, yeah. Every article I read, they were like, the director was just like, it would have been too much. It would have just been too upsetting.
And I think it was, like, already very upsetting in itself.
So, I mean, the story is, I believe his name was Chris Von Erich, and he had a brittle bone condition and asthma, so he couldn't really meet those expectations of his father, and ended up taking his own life at 21, I believe in 1999. But
I don't know the facts on that.
It's just tragic. I mean, it's like, that's another one that he doesn't even get the light to see, to tell his story.
Yeah, and it really is interesting to talk about, like, which ones were interested in wrestling, which ones aren't. Like I said, Kevin was a wrestler. David was basically into wrestling, but he was mostly doing it because he was good.
Do you think they would have been into wrestling if their father hadn't pushed it so hard on them?
No.
Given their character?
I think they could have been athletes. Like we saw, Carrie was supposed to be a U.S. Olympic athlete before it got canceled. I think they would have been athletes that were just something athletic. But, like, the first scene in the movie that, like, nobody talks about is it shows Fritz during his wrestling career. And it shows him coming out, and it just shows how hard he is on his kids. Because the only ones who are present at that time, I'm pretty sure is Jack Jr. and Kevin, because those are the 2 oldest. And once you see that, you're like, oh, the father's a wrestler, and now he owns a wrestling business, and he has his kids under him, and he pushes them. And it's just like, it's brutal. It's really bad the way the dad treats him. His story is very
interesting, too. It's like, he played college football at SMU and then married his wife, and then lost his scholarship, and then played football at another school, then had a little bit of time in the NFL, and then didn't really shine at all, and then became a wrestler, and then played for $5, and just like he was constantly getting disappointed, I think, and he put that energy so much into his family.
Well, I was saying that he was never a champion. He wanted his kids to be champion. And with that, we've covered basically everything that was important in this movie. So Max, after seeing The Iron Claw, what score would you give it?
I would have to give it a 9. I just feel like I left the theater with such admiration for the cast and the story that I had none before I went to see it, like nothing.
Yeah, I went into that movie, like I said, I didn't know the story. I'll be honest, I didn't even want to see it.
Yeah,
I had other
same.
movies in mind I wanted to see, and my friends were like, we should see this instead. It was I think my third favorite movie of 2023, just behind Oppenheimer and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
It's an amazing movie, so I'm gonna have to give it a
up there
9.
for me.
I'm gonna have to give it a 9 as well. It's just overall an amazing movie with a lot of emotion and a lot of heart, and it was just A24 doing what A24 does best. They just make great movies.
Yeah.
And with that, that's a wrap for us, and we'll see you next time.